The HOA letter arrived on Thanksgiving morning, right between the smell of pine logs and Ruthie's green bean casserole. "I resign," it said. "I'm Emily Sanders, 38, and this land's been in my family longer than Cheryl's bylaws." The cider was warm, but the silence that followed? Ice cold. Ever had to defend your backyard from a smile that bites? "Tell me, what would you have done?" Emily Sanders hadn't stepped foot in Stillwater for 10 years, not since the last Thanksgiving when Grandpa Bill taught her how to tie a fishing knot with frozen fingers and too much hot cocoa. But now she was back, pulling her rental car into the gravel drive of the lakefront cabin, the air sharp with October chill and the trees blazing red and orange like a fire frozen mid-roar. The cabin stood sturdier than she remembered. The porch had been swept. The hedges pruned back from the stone path. The mailbox, once a chipped green relic, had been freshly painted a dull HOA standard beige. Emily squinted at it, then at the sign now posted at the end of the drive, "Welcome to Whispering Pines, an HOA community." Inside, the air held that dry, woody scent of old books and older memories. Plaid blankets still folded neatly on the armchair. The wall clock ticked softly above a mantle of faded fishing photos. On the shelf, a VHS collection sagged under titles like Great Northern Pike 1993 and Stillwater Ice Derby. Emily dropped her suitcase by the coat rack and wandered through the living room. Grandpa's recliner stood untouched. His thermos, polished but empty, sat upright by the window facing the lake. Everything was too clean, too in order. It was like someone had been maintaining the place in his absence. Curious, she headed into town. Margie's diner hadn't changed a bit. The bell jingled as she entered, and the smell of cinnamon, bacon grease, and old coffee wrapped around her like a flannel hug. She took a seat at the counter and ordered pancakes and black coffee, filter brew, powdered creamer. Craig from next door slid onto the stool beside her halfway through her second bite. He looked older, but still wore that same Stillwater sweatshirt with the sleeves pushed up. "Didn't expect to see you back," he said, nodding toward her plate. "Didn't expect to be back," Emily replied, smiling faintly. He handed her a brown envelope. "HOA welcome packet." Cheryl insisted. "New rules, updated map, emergency contacts. And something about the autumn beautification tour." Emily blinked. "Beautification?" "Yup. We rake leaves in color-coded shifts now," Craig said, only half joking. Later that afternoon, back at the cabin, Emily unpacked slowly, letting the quiet of the lake settle around her. She passed Grandpa's desk, oak, scratched, stubborn. There, tucked in the drawer beneath an old tackle box, she found it, an envelope marked in his blocky handwriting. "Not everything's what it seems." Inside was a faded map showing the original property lines. The lakefront was clearly part of the Sanders estate. Attached was a note, "Protect the lakefront. Don't let them push." She sat down hard. Protect it from who? A breeze rustled the curtains. Emily walked outside, down the short path to the dock. The water was low this time of year, smooth like glass. But what caught her eye wasn't the lake. A sign had been posted on the edge of the dock, bolted to a new post. White background. Gold trim. A crisp HOA logo at the top. No private use. Community access only. By order of Whispering Pines HOA. Emily stood frozen, the envelope still in her hand. Grandpa's note whispered in her mind. Not everything's what it seems. She turned back toward the cabin slowly, her jaw set. Stillwater wasn't going to be peaceful for long. Emily stood outside the converted firehouse that now served as the Stillwater Community Hall, its red brick facade cracked near the foundation and its glass windows fogged with condensation. The autumn air bit at her cheeks as she wrapped her scarf a little tighter and stepped through the creaky double doors. Inside, the air smelled faintly of stale coffee, lemon-scented floor polish, and something plasticky from the folding chairs. A crowd had already gathered, around 24 residents, most older than her by at least a decade. They clustered in small groups, chatting softly or flipping through photocopied handouts. A long table near the back held a bubbling coffee urn, a platter of store-bought cookies, though someone had made the effort to place them on a china tray, and an American flag centerpiece. "Welcome, Emily," came a warm, syrupy voice from the front. It belonged to a woman with stiff, helmet-like hair and a cranberry-colored wool blazer, her hands folded just so. "I'm Cheryl. You must be Bill Sanders' granddaughter." Emily blinked. "Yes. That's right. So glad you could join us tonight." Cheryl's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. It's always heartwarming when the next generation shows interest in community stewardship. Emily nodded politely and took an empty chair next to a small woman with reading glasses hanging on a beaded chain. The name tag on her knitted cardigan read, Ruthie. "You're in for a treat," Ruthie whispered, eyes twinkling. "These meetings are a hoot." A gavel rapped softly against the podium. "Let's get started, shall we?" Cheryl called out. First order of business, the Autumn Beautification Tour and its prize categories. Someone clapped weakly in the back. Emily's gaze wandered to the community bulletin board. Flyers for everything from pet grooming to cinnamon bun bake-offs fluttered under pushpins. She half listened to Cheryl's praise of decorative gourds and solar-powered lawn angels. Then the tone shifted. "As we all know," Cheryl continued, "maintaining the character and safety of our lakeside community is a shared responsibility. That's why the board is proposing a new initiative, Community Resource Consolidation." Emily's brow furrowed. She glanced at Ruthie, who raised an eyebrow. "That includes enhanced oversight of shoreline usage," Cheryl added, her voice smooth as lake ice. "We've noticed some non-contributing properties making extensive use of lakefront access. It's only fair we revisit privileges tied to HOA participation." The word non-contributing hung in the air like smoke. Emily leaned forward. "Excuse me, what does revisit mean exactly?" Cheryl's head tilted just a bit. "Oh, nothing drastic. Just a gentle reminder that shared spaces are, well, shared. And those who are aligned with the HOA's values should be the first to enjoy them." Emily caught the shift. This wasn't about maintenance. It was about control. From her lap, Ruthie slid a folded napkin into Emily's hand. Scrawled in tidy script were the words, "Ask about the bylaws, don't let them steamroll you." Later in the meeting, Cheryl's tone turned sugar-sweet again. "Before we adjourn, I'd like to extend a formal invitation to Emily. With her grandfather's passing, we're eager to bring her property into the HOA family. We've prepared some compliance forms, purely procedural, of course." Emily stared. "But, wasn't my grandfather's home grandfathered in? I mean, before the HOA even existed?" Cheryl smiled wider. "It's true the bylaws have evolved over time, but we see this as an opportunity. A fresh start. All we ask is a signature, and you'll be part of our collective vision." Craig, sitting 3 chairs down, looked uncomfortable and coughed into his hand. He glanced sideways but said nothing. Earlier, he had mistakenly called her Eleanor. Now he avoided her gaze altogether. Ruthie leaned in, voice low. "Your grandfather never signed. And he had his reasons." Emily took the forms but didn't sign. The pages felt heavier than they looked. As the meeting ended, residents trickled out, chatting about leaf collection and which neighbor had the best cider recipe. Cheryl stood near the door, thanking each attendee personally. "Hope you'll consider joining us," she said sweetly as Emily passed. "We take pride in preserving our heritage." "Funny," Emily replied. So did Grandpa. Outside, the air was even colder. The full moon shimmered on the lake like a mirror. Ruthie walked alongside her, hands deep in her coat pockets. "That lakefront," she murmured, "might be the real fight." Emily didn't reply. Her eyes were fixed on the cabin across the water, and the new sign by the dock she hadn't noticed earlier. It was identical to the last one but with a fresh addition in smaller print. "Subject to board review." Rain tapped steadily against the kitchen window as Emily stood at the stove, waiting for the kettle to whistle. The old enamel pot rattled just slightly as it built up pressure, and the faint scent of leftover meatloaf and mashed potatoes filled the warm space. She'd reheated last night's dinner, comfort food, simple and steady, just the way Grandpa used to make it when October turned cold. The red cardinal outside the window blinked once before hopping along the sill and vanishing into the maple tree. Emily set down her fork just as the mail slot clinked. A thick manila envelope lay on the mat, slightly damp at the corner. The return address was embossed with the familiar stylized pinecone logo, Stillwater Lakeside HOA. She froze for half a second, then picked it up. The paper inside rustled ominously. Her name was printed in bold at the top of a letter, and beneath it, rows of legal phrasing stretched on and on. As per Article 4, Section 3 of the revised Community Preservation Mandate, all adjacent lakefront properties are henceforth considered part of the shared access easement, effective immediately. Emily read the paragraph twice, her eyes narrowing. Buried beneath the polished phrasing and references to heritage alignment and unified stewardship was a message clear as glass: get off the dock. It doesn't belong to you anymore. Her pulse quickened. She laid the envelope flat on the kitchen table, pushing aside the dish of mashed potatoes. Another paper slipped free from inside, one that hadn't been attached. She picked it up. This one was shorter, with fewer euphemisms. Please sign the enclosed waiver within 10 business days to confirm your cooperation. Failure to comply may result in fines and formal HOA action. It was dated October 24th. Emily set the page down slowly. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the old cassette deck near the windowsill. She pressed play. Soft jazz crackled from the speakers, one of Grandpa's tapes. It sounded like Bill Evans. Maybe Oscar Peterson. Notes floated around her like memory itself. She stood still for a moment, letting the music anchor her, then walked to the bookshelf where Grandpa's maps were kept. The one he'd left her in the envelope, marked boundaries, notes in the margins, was still folded neatly between two photo albums. She opened it and traced the lakefront line with her finger. A flash of Grandpa's voice echoed in her memory. She'd been maybe 16, sitting on the porch as he adjusted the antenna on an ancient TV. "They'll wait till I'm gone, Em. That's how these types work. Quiet at first. Then one day, boom, clipboards, signatures, new rules." She hadn't thought much of it then. But now, his words felt heavier. The phone rang. She blinked and picked it up. "Emily," a familiar voice crackled on the line. It was Cheryl. "Just wanted to follow up on the letter. I do hope you understand it's nothing personal. Just policy. We're all stewards of this place." Emily didn't reply. Cheryl went on, smooth as a realtor's script. "I'm sure you'll see the benefit. After all, it's about protecting our shared spaces, right?" "I'll take it under advisement," Emily said coolly, and hung up. She looked at the clock. 8:52 p.m. Without hesitating, she picked up her cell phone and scrolled to a contact labeled Joan. They hadn't spoken in years, not since that Christmas when Grandpa had taken her to the town's tree lighting and introduced her to his smartest neighbor. Joan was a retired attorney who still consulted now and then. She specialized in land use and property law. Emily tapped the call button. "Joan." "Hey, it's Emily Sanders." "Yes, it's been a while." She exhaled slowly. "I think the HOA is bluffing. But I'm not backing down." Outside, the rain continued its rhythm, but something had shifted inside her. She wasn't just a visitor anymore. The morning air was brisk, laced with the scent of drying leaves and something faintly metallic, like the memory of rain on old tools. Emily stood in the backyard, boots crunching over the patchwork of maple and birch leaves. The shed loomed ahead, squat and weathered, its hinges moaning as she tugged open the door. Inside, dust motes danced in rays of light streaming through a crack in the roof. Cobwebs crisscrossed shelves lined with paint cans from a bygone era. A wooden oar leaned against a stack of old lanterns, and a tangled mess of fishing line drooped from a nail. Emily rolled up her sleeves. "All right, Grandpa," she muttered. "Let's see what you left behind." She began clearing out the space, lifting crates of nails, half-empty bags of fertilizer, a rusted snow shovel with a taped handle. The work was rhythmic, almost calming, until she shifted a heavy wooden bin of garden shears and something behind it caught her eye. A metal box, dull gray with age, sat tucked into the corner under the workbench. Its surface was pitted and scratched, but clear as day, written in thick black marker. For Emmy, just in case. Her breath caught. She knelt, brushing off layers of dust and a dead spider. The latch clicked open easily, as if it had been waiting. Inside was a VHS tape labeled HOA 98, an envelope with folded yellowing paper, and, at the very bottom, a sealed packet stamped Stillwater Lakeside Civic Association, 1997. The papers inside were brittle but legible. Bylaws. Originals. Preacher. Emily brought the box inside, setting it carefully on the kitchen table. She poured herself a cup of coffee using the old percolator she found on the back shelf. It sputtered and hissed, filling the room with rich, nostalgic aroma. Jazz hummed low from the cassette deck, still running Grandpa's old tapes. She flipped through the envelope's contents. Grandpa's notes were in his tidy script. Cheryl pushed for revisions in '99. Not legal. Ruthie remembers the vote didn't pass. Recordings kept. Watch the tape. A knock at the back door made her jump. It was Ruthie, bundled in a purple shawl that looked hand-knit and proudly aged. Emily had called her an hour earlier, asking if she remembered anything about the original HOA rules. I brought banana bread, Ruthie announced, holding up a foil-wrapped loaf. Thought you might need sugar with your revolution. Emily chuckled and stepped aside. As Ruthie spotted the VHS tape on the table, her breath hitched. Oh my lord. That's the meeting they swore never happened. You remember it? I was there. She pulled out a chair and eased down slowly. It was a stormy Tuesday night. Cheryl showed up with a new binder full of changes, claimed she had a quorum. She didn't. Bill stood up, said the lakefront wasn't theirs to assign. I backed him. Emily sat opposite her, heart thudding. And this tape proves it. If it's the full recording? Yes. It proves they redrafted the bylaws without proper vote. Illegally, in fact. She reached for the original documents Emily had spread across the table. These were signed by everyone who's passed. And this, she pointed to a paragraph, states clearly that the lakefront belongs to original deed holders unless sold. Your grandpa never sold. He kept every receipt. Cheryl knew it. Emily exhaled sharply, feeling both vindicated and furious. They've been bluffing this whole time. She stared at the VHS tape, its plastic casing dulled by time. Let's digitize it, she said quietly. Let's show the whole neighborhood. The jazz track faded into a soft piano solo. Ruthie nodded, tears welling faintly behind her glasses. Bill would be proud, she whispered. This isn't just about a doc. It's about standing up to the rewriting of truth. Emily placed the lid back on the metal box and set her jaw. Stillwater had a reckoning coming. Emily stood at the edge of her front lawn, hammer in hand, as she planted the last wooden stake into the cold October soil. A sign, large enough to catch the eye of anyone on Stillwater Drive, now stood boldly between her geraniums and trimmed hedges. Painted in precise black cursive over a white background, it read, No HOA trespassing, per Article 3, Clause 7, 1991. Below it, in smaller script, this property predates the HOA. Respect precedents. Within minutes, the first neighbor stopped, an older man walking a golden retriever who gave a polite nod but looked twice at the lettering. Then came a mother pushing a stroller, her eyes lingering as she passed. By noon, a group of kids dressed in early Halloween costumes paused, whispering near the sidewalk. One of them, dressed like a tiny firefighter, shouted, Mom. This one has a rule sign. The morning air smelled faintly of wood smoke and cinnamon. Leaves crunched under Emily's boots as she returned inside. Ruthie was already sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of hot cider. Her purple shawl shimmered faintly in the sunlight. "They'll throw a fit, you know," Ruthie murmured, tapping the rim of her mug. "That's the plan," Emily replied with a smirk. Sure enough, an hour later, Craig nervously shuffled up the walkway, holding a crisp white envelope. He handed it to Emily without eye contact, muttering something about procedures and clarifications. She thanked him and stepped back into the cabin to read. It was from Cheryl. "Dear resident," the letter began in printed Times New Roman font. "In accordance with HOA Visual Uniformity Standards, Section 6.2, your recent display of signage does not meet community norms and must be removed within 48 hours. Non-compliance may result in fines and administrative actions." Emily almost laughed. "Uniformity," she said aloud, "has never been my strength." That afternoon, she removed the first sign, and replaced it with a new one. This time, the lettering was even more elegant. She carved the quote into a polished wood frame, sanded it, and hung it with brass hooks. At the bottom, she added decorative vines with tiny lake trout etched along the corners. It was beautiful. Even Craig hesitated before delivering the next envelope. "Did you make this one yourself?" he asked, genuinely admiring the craftsmanship. "I followed every rule," Emily answered sweetly. By evening, trick-or-treaters were out in force. Emily stood on the porch with Grandpa's old thermos, pouring hot cider into paper cups for parents. Kids giggled at her signs and complimented the porch's sweet smell. One boy, dressed as a robot, grinned. "Your house smells like pancakes." "It's the cinnamon oil in the diffuser," Emily replied. "But pancakes are a good guess." As the night wore on, Ruthie returned with news. "3 of the neighbors liked your sign," she whispered. "They won't say it out loud, but they're tired of Cheryl too." Emily nodded. The lines were forming, slowly but surely. That night, as she opened the latest HOA letter, now stamped in bold red ink and capital letters, she didn't flinch. Instead, she poured herself another cup of cider, curled up by the fireplace, and smiled. "Let's see how Cheryl reacts when I follow every rule, just a little too perfectly." Chapter 6, Echoes from the Past. Ruthie unlocked the back room of the Stillwater Public Library with a creak that echoed like a whisper through the stacks. The room smelled of old paper and lemon cleaner, with dust dancing under the dim flicker of overhead fluorescent lights. Joan set down her briefcase beside a folding table, pulling out her slim laptop. Emily stood behind her, arms crossed but her posture leaning forward, eager and uncertain. "This better work," Joan muttered, inserting the USB stick. The whir of the laptop was the only sound until the screen lit up. The VHS, now digitized, sprang to life with jittery frames and poor color balance. A timestamp in the corner read, October 14, 1998. The camera panned across a small church basement, metal folding chairs, stale donuts in a white box, and a poorly placed American flag drooping from its pole. "There she is," Ruthie whispered. A younger Cheryl, her hair more auburn than gray, stood at the front of the room. Her voice was sharp, but she wore a fixed smile. "It's a temporary adjustment to the easement clause," she said, waving a piece of paper. "We need to protect the shared value of the lakefront." Grandpa Bill appeared from the corner of the frame. Even through the haze of old tape, his calm was unmistakable. He raised a hand. "A temporary rule needs a proper vote. You're asking us to set precedent without process." A murmured agreement rolled through the room. Someone coughed. A woman near the door folded her arms tightly. Cheryl's smile wavered. Back in the present, Joan leaned closer to the screen. "Pause here," she said. Ruthie hit the spacebar. "See that?" Joan pointed. "That vote never happened. And if this was the meeting where they altered access bylaws, it was procedurally invalid." Emily sat down slowly. The screen froze on Grandpa Bill's face, his eyes resolute, chin lifted. "He tried to stop them," she said softly. Joan nodded. "This wasn't archived. If we show this at the HOA forum, it undermines their foundation. That easement clause they're using? Illegitimate." Ruthie looked at Emily with a gleam in her eye. They thought nobody saved it. They never expected someone like Bill to be thorough. Emily pressed play again. The camera caught the end of the meeting, raised voices, chairs scraping, a few members walking out in protest. Your grandpa knew what was coming, Jones said. He preserved this for a reason. Outside, wind rustled the brittle November leaves. Inside, something stronger stirred, resolve, legacy, and the quiet rage of being underestimated for too long. As the video faded to black, Emily reached out and tapped the screen. Her voice was barely a whisper. You kept this for me, didn't you, Grandpa? Joan picked up her coffee, lukewarm and too weak, but drank anyway. Ruthie pulled her old Stillwater Public Library 1983 sweatshirt tighter around her shoulders. Emily sat still for a long moment, then stood. Her hands trembled, but her voice was steady. Let's get ready. The forum's next week. And with that, the plan to reveal the truth began to take form, quiet, but certain as the cardinal outside the window, watching from the bare branches of an aging elm. Chapter 7, The Town Hall Forum. The basement of Stillwater First Church buzzed with the low murmur of anticipation. Folding chairs scraped against the floor as neighbors settled in, bundled in fleece vests and cardigans. Joan adjusted the projector lens while Ruthie handed out oatmeal raisin cookies from a tin marked, Thanksgiving 1987. Emily stood near the front, her fingers curled tightly around a flash drive. Her heart pounded, but her face was composed. Joan's words echoed in her mind, just press play. Let the truth speak. At precisely 6 p.m., Cheryl entered with her usual poise, a clipboard in hand, lips pursed in a performative smile. She took a front row seat without acknowledging Emily. Emily stepped up to the podium. Her voice was low but clear. Good evening. I'm Emily Sanders. My grandfather, Bill, owned the cabin at Lot 12 for over 50 years. He believed in this town, and in fairness. What I'm about to share isn't just about land. It's about what was promised. She nodded to Joan, who queued up the file. The projector flickered to life, casting grainy footage across the makeshift screen. Gasps rippled through the crowd as young Cheryl appeared on screen. Her voice filled the room, it's a temporary adjustment to the easement clause. A man near the back muttered, I remember this. They said it was lost. Another voice chimed in, didn't they say it never happened? Then came Grandpa Bill's voice, calm but firm, you're asking us to set precedent without process. Whispers grew. Joan watched the audience carefully, noting their frowns and murmurs. Some residents leaned forward, eyes wide. The footage showed the unrecorded vote that never came. Cheryl's refusal to hold one. And the moment members began to leave in protest. When the lights came back on, silence held the room like a held breath. Then Craig stood slowly. We were misled. I was there. I didn't vote because they never let us. Cheryl stood. Her voice trembled at first but rose with authority. This meeting is invalid under HOA Code Section 4. You lost that authority years ago, a woman near the cookies snapped. Ruthie, standing beside her, simply nodded. Joan stepped up. The bylaws you've used to enforce shared easement. They stem from this unratified meeting. Legally, it doesn't hold. The crowd shifted uneasily. Cheryl's face tightened, but she said nothing more. Ruthie touched Emily's shoulder and pressed something small into her palm. It was a bronze pin, slightly tarnished, shaped like a leaping fish. He wore it to every vote, Ruthie whispered. Emily held it tightly, the warmth of the room falling around her like November sunlight through stained glass. She looked across the sea of faces, some hopeful, some ashamed, some quietly inspired. The fight wasn't over. But for the first time, she wasn't alone. And outside, under a darkening sky, Stillwater paused, as if waiting for something long overdue. Chapter 8, The Lakefront Belongs to You. 2 weeks passed. The trees of Stillwater stood bare now, their limbs like open hands lifting toward a slate-gray sky. On Thanksgiving morning, a crisp breeze drifted down from the lake, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke and pine. Emily stepped onto her porch, a dish towel tucked over her shoulder. The flag on the mailbox fluttered gently. She clutched a letter she had found that morning, its header stamped with the HOA emblem, but this time the words were different. To all residents. Due to unforeseen strain and recent procedural disagreements, Cheryl Lindholm, resign my position as HOA president, effective immediately. Emily reread it once, then tucked it beside the cider jug on the porch railing. By mid-morning, folding chairs lined the lawn. Neighbors arrived bearing pie tins, foil-wrapped casseroles, and warm greetings. Ruthie brought a green bean bake and a quiet grin. Craig appeared with sweet potatoes and a sheepish shrug. I should have spoken up sooner, he said. I knew something was off. Just didn't want to rock the boat. You're here now, Emily said simply, and that was enough. Children ran laughing along the path near the dock, their boots crunching on brittle leaves. Someone put on an old portable speaker, and Grandpa's favorite holiday record played. The notes of a jazz rendition of Autumn Leaves drifted through the air. Joan arrived last, in her ever-reliable tweed coat. She held up a printout. HOA voted last night. The lakefront clause is reversed. Access is reinstated. They're forming a committee to rewrite the charter. Fairly, this time. And guess who they listed as a founding contributor in the newsletter? Emily smiled. She didn't need to see the page to know. As dusk approached, neighbors lingered. Someone suggested reviving the winter tree lighting, and all eyes turned to Emily. Only if Ruthie brings her mulled cider, she teased. The laughter that followed was easy and full. Later, as the last guests waved goodbye, Emily returned inside. The living room was warm, the turntables softly spinning. On the mantel sat a final envelope, one she hadn't noticed before. Her name was written in Grandpa Bill's hand. She opened it slowly. Emmy. The land is yours, but so is the courage. I knew you'd come back for both. Love. Grandpa. Emily stepped to the window and looked out at the lake. The water shimmered in the fading light, peaceful and unclaimed. A boy skipped a stone across its surface, each hop rippling wider than the last. And for the first time in years, Stillwater felt like home. Chapter 8, The Lakefront Belongs to You. 2 weeks passed. The trees of Stillwater stood bare now, their limbs like open hands lifting toward a slate-gray sky. On Thanksgiving morning, a crisp breeze drifted down from the lake, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke and pine. Emily stepped onto her porch, a dish towel tucked over her shoulder. The flag on the mailbox fluttered gently. She clutched a letter she had found that morning, its header stamped with the HOA emblem, but this time the words were different. To all residents. Due to unforeseen strain and recent procedural disagreements, Cheryl Lindholm, resign my position as HOA president, effective immediately. Emily reread it once, then tucked it beside the cider jug on the porch railing. By mid-morning, folding chairs lined the lawn. Neighbors arrived bearing pie tins, foil-wrapped casseroles, and warm greetings. Ruthie brought a green bean bake and a quiet grin. Craig appeared with sweet potatoes and a sheepish shrug. I should have spoken up sooner, he said. I knew something was off. Just didn't want to rock the boat. You're here now, Emily said simply, and that was enough. Children ran laughing along the path near the dock, their boots crunching on brittle leaves. Someone put on an old portable speaker, and Grandpa's favorite holiday record played. The notes of a jazz rendition of Autumn Leaves drifted through the air. Joan arrived last, in her ever-reliable tweed coat. She held up a printout. HOA voted last night. The lakefront clause is reversed. Access is reinstated. They're forming a committee to rewrite the charter. Fairly, this time. And guess who they listed as a founding contributor in the newsletter? Emily smiled. She didn't need to see the page to know. As dusk approached, neighbors lingered. Someone suggested reviving the winter tree lighting, and all eyes turned to Emily. Only if Ruthie brings her mulled cider, she teased. The laughter that followed was easy and full. Later, as the last guests waved goodbye, Emily returned inside. The living room was warm, the turntables softly spinning. On the mantel sat a final envelope, one she hadn't noticed before. Her name was written in Grandpa Bill's hand. She opened it slowly. Emmy. The land is yours, but so is the courage. I knew you'd come back for both. Love. Grandpa. Emily stepped to the window and looked out at the lake. The water shimmered in the fading light, peaceful and unclaimed. A boy skipped a stone across its surface, each hop rippling wider than the last. And for the first time in years, Stillwater felt like home.